Welcome back for episode 23 of Natty Muscle Radio. Now we're joined today by none other than your favourite pro or classic physique pro, Bob Waterhouse, and my co-host.
Not DFAC Pro. Not IFBB Pro. Not British Champion. Not won a show. Pro Aeronn Bevan. So you're in great company.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's the intro that we've all dreamed of.
If anyone I'll preface this episode by if anyone that has watched this. So naturally, you've got a little bit more popular over the weekend. Can't think why. But our kind of 100 regular followers that always said, we'll be there from the start. You guys will all know the kind of jokes we made about being a pro, IFBB pro, and call out kind of certain classic physique pros. Sorry, Steve Lorius, for your back. And kind of things like that as a joke. Not a joke anymore.
I know, it's very surreal, isn't it? It's a weird one because I think it's we'll get into it on the podcast, but I mean, I've obviously been visualizing doing this show and winning a show all year since I started prep, which was September last year. Now, for some reason, without sounding really corny or cheesy or whatever you want to say, the stars aligned for me massively by the shows being put back. The reason I've not done Two Bros in the past before, when they did originally launch and everyone was like, you've got to do classic physique, was because simply the show dates were too early in the year for the fat kid trying to get in shape, which is me, obviously. So I think it's one of them where it's we all think about winning and you train to win, and then to actually pull it off is then it's actually happened. I was like, what the fuck? So, I mean, I think that, going out of prejudging, I was going to be happy to place top 5. Right, and then for you to keep getting called and then your name being called until the end was you can see it on the video. My face is just jokes. It's just don't know what to say. This is ridiculous. So yeah, for them.
We said, didn't we, that I knew how you looked going into the show, and not many people did, because we didn't even episode 22. We didn't even mention that you were doing a show, right? The next week, we just kind of talked about that you were prepping, and your face was getting more and more drawn. And anyone who kind of put 2 and 2 together might have known that your face was a little bit ahead for a kind of show in 7 weeks.
I kind of aged about 6 years over the course of the 4 months we recorded the podcast, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
So
what we knew, what you knew is that if this show was judged on classic physique, on real classic physique, that you really did stand a good chance. And being in the crowd watching the show, it just became more and more apparent that that's truly what they were looking for, and I think that's what you got rewarded, and that's great to see, because I think there's often a lot of too much kind of muddy in the waters between the different classes. You get big men's physique guys winning, and people kind of too big, or even when you see the likes of Patrick Moore doing well in open, people are he's not big enough. Perhaps should be classic. So it can be really difficult sometimes when you get them kind of crossovers. But I think, it was nice to see that this show got judged for the kind of criteria. And I think that's really rewarded you.
And that's the thing. It's we, from judging bodybuilding shows and, looking at physiques, the bigger, the easy example, I guess, really is the times I've judged a Miss Figure class, and 6 women turn up who are all straight up, straight down, who all look like athletic competitors. And you're right, well, we want, Sean Ray analogy, we want apples and oranges kind of thing, or we want grapefruits, and you're left with nothing but bananas. So it's well, what do we do? What are we supposed to pick? We're supposed to pick the best of what's up there. And that can very much happen. And I think that's, for me, it's totally obvious. Even watching the live stream back and looking at the pictures, if it was a normal bodybuilding show, I reckon I don't think I would have made the top 5. And that's not me being like humble or whatever. It's like the other guys all had bigger body parts than I did.
Yeah.
I arguably, yes, had the best shape and probably the best midsection up there. But everyone was bigger than me and just as hard as I was, if not harder than I was in a lot of shots. Like my back, I got smoked on some of the back shots. But, you know, classic physique, you've got one back shot, the rest are all fronts and sides, and that's very strong for me. So it's kind of like, you know.
It was, so when Claire and I were watching, and I really liked the format of each competitor coming out and hitting some shots. It was really cool to see that, because that's what we see when you watch NPC shows in the States, IFBB shows. And, you know, your class, Class C was the deepest class, the biggest class. B, sorry. It was the biggest and deepest class. And people were coming out, and I was like, I mean, Claire and I were like, he's huge. He's rock hard. And you were the last competitor. And it was only when you walked out that it kind of the penny dropped, and I thought, oh, actually, it doesn't matter that these guys have maybe got bigger legs, maybe bigger this, because none of them look as classic as you do. And then it became apparent, kind of in the you know, the routine and the quarter turns and stuff, and hashtag so classic. So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess it's, you know, it's one of them things where it just goes to show that you have to put a lot into the other aspects of competing. You can't just turn up rock hard and with lots of muscle if you don't have the presentation to go on with it. And that's the biggest feedback I got over the weekend, was like, posing was flawless and it just flowed so well with your whole physique and your stage presence. And fuck, I was having a good time. I was having such a good time, especially by the overall. Like,
I know, I can see.
It was just buzzing. I was just buzzing to be there and just thought, this is brilliant. And it shows on stage, you know?
Yeah, it does. What did I say to you? So we've trained in Ultraflex. God, it feels like ages ago, but it wasn't in terms of prep. How many weeks out? 4 weeks out, maybe?
4 to 6.
Yes, yeah, something like that. And you were gassed posing, right? We were in that room, and there was all sorts of water coming off you. You couldn't twist. And I said to you, is that no one should outpose you on that stage. You need to come out off that, you know, off that show having the absolute best presentation. And if you win or you don't, you need to have people saying, "Oh, what a great poser! You know, how well presented." You did that, and with everything else, I think that's what's seen you over the line. You know, because it was clear that you'd put time and effort into that. You know, when you hit your classic shot, it was classic. You know, we joke about being more classic, but it really was perfect. You know, guys were just hitting. Some guys were just hitting a lat spread, which can be a great shot. But the things that you were doing have been really thought out. And the point you make then about competitors maybe not thinking and needing to think about all the other things. It's that 1%, isn't it, right? You know, and you hear Sean Ray and all these guys talking about it. That you know, posing isn't considered anymore. Not you know, people just coming and hitting most musculars in open and stuff like that. And you hear Labrada banging on about it, and it's for a reason, because it really can be the difference. And in this class, it clearly made all the difference.
Yeah, I think it stands out when someone can pose. You know, everyone can hit mandatories fairly well. Like, I don't think there was anyone on that stage who couldn't hit mandatories well.
No.
It's just having all the transitions and the, you know, like the slight kink in the hips and being able to keep your legs hard in a front double just looks better or more classic if you can do it right.
I didn't see, you know, little things stood out to me, and I think, you know, Natty high horse time, but when you compete in the natural federation and you don't have access to certain other things, you have to make the most out of things like presentation. You know, when you turn to the side, I didn't see anybody with hip, upper quad, glute detail that you did. Now, maybe when people turn to the back, you know, it was all there, because it's kind of, you know, glutes and bodybuilding are synonymous now, right? But, you know, on them side shots with the tiny waist and the sucked in serratus and the glute detail, I didn't really see that. And I think when you come through the likes of the BNBF, you you have the clubs and those little details, the foot position and that, and it's the kind of thing that a lot of people would just dismiss and just hit a quarter turn.
Yeah.
It matters. It really matters, and I think you could see that. You really could.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's cool. So I mean, I'm not sure where you want to kind of take this, but as I mentioned, I started prep last September, and
get down
at 102 kilos. I want to say 103, but I think it was 102. Which is
you haven't posted any transformations yet, right?
I mean, I did the video last night, and I need slightly better lighting because I have to wait till it's dark. But basically, I've got, and this is pretty jokes, I've got the fat version, which I'm looking at on the camera, and then I've got my work phone, which I'm filming it on, and I'm copying it like for like, quarter turn, face to the back.
Funny.
And it's so funny. So funny. From a 38-inch waist to a 29-inch waist, it looks pretty funny. Looks like I'm wearing a memory foam pillow on my tummy, basically. So I'm sure it's going to cause a massive stir, and I'm sure it's not going to be popular with everybody because it's not necessary. But fuck, I did it my way anyway, so yeah, it's one of them. But it'll be funny. So yeah, 102, 103 kilos down to 74.4 on show day because I took my scales with me because bodybuilding. So just bodybuilding. So yeah, jokes. But obviously, we did go to Dubai in Christmas time, and I also had, well, I say Christmas time, December, and then I took 2 days off at Christmas because no one should diet on Christmas Day or Boxing Day, even if it's really hardcore. Nah.
No, that's G. James Poyner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, CC him in on this. And yeah, so other than that, we basically had a load of other trips and stuff booked, like to Paris and places like that with friends who come over from Oz. And I was dieting the whole time, like sat there where everyone was eating pizza and pasta and eating my bowl of oats in a coffee shop while I was sightseeing. So, the weight come down very nicely. I'd love to say there was like loads of hiccups and stuff, but it was like the dream prep because obviously COVID hit. So apart from not being able to train in the gym and having to train with very limited equipment in my back garden gym in the rain or shine and the snow, I'd like to say there was snow, but there wasn't, because hardcore. It was like you couldn't ask for a better prep because all I did was eat, sleep and train for 4 months or 5 months because I had nothing else to do other than coaching my clients, working out each day, taking regimented naps and prepping my food. And that is all. And some PlayStation because relaxing time.
Yeah.
So like it was just like you couldn't have asked for a better time. Like previous preps I've done, I had really hard troubles losing weight, and this time round I made changes a lot quicker because I knew that obviously wasn't going to be in shape. And if you remember, they did move the Tubo show. It was supposed to be like earlier in July, August, or whatever it was, and I had like 7 weeks out at one point, and I was thinking I'm really not going to be ready, but like I'm just going to keep fighting for it. And then they delayed it another 4 weeks, and like I wouldn't say I was 100% on the money because I think people who know me and see me compete before, and it's kind of dickish to say for the fact that how well the weekend went.
Yeah.
But there is so much more in conditioning wise that I've been in the past, which I can get to.
Well, people only have to look at you. People only have to look through your Instagram to see, you being harder, right? So. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm buzzing for that in some ways, but as I said, it was a good enough package with regards to condition, fullness, and shape and flow to look and present a very, very good package. So there wasn't really any hiccups on prep. There was maybe the last week where I got a bit sick and was carrying a bit of water, and just from taking ibuprofen and cold and flu. And when you're down at them levels, your body's very, very sensitive. And like, you know, I looked like, I wouldn't say a bag of shit 3 days out, but I really didn't look like I wanted to.
Yeah.
And that did just disperse by show day. My legs had got better and better as I rested them more. I was doing near enough 2 hours of cardio on prep this year, hour and 40, hour and 50 some days, long walks in the morning, and my legs were starting to disappear a little bit. I've definitely lost a little bit of that outside sweep over the couple of years I've been competing. And I think maybe some of that is doing like the long preps and the long walks and stuff like that. So I'm only really confident that they'll bounce back a little bit now I'm off them a bit more. I'm not doing 15, 20,000 steps a day anymore. It's more like 10 at a push.
I think you lose. I think the body parts, we've said this before on the podcast, the body parts that are not your kind of cornerstones, this is for anybody, those are the ones that sacrifice when you are dieting for long periods of time and stuff like that. So for me, you know, I don't lose leg size from the start to the end of prep, but my arms will shrink. You know, and I suppose you could, so that the same sort of thing for you, right? You lose leg fullness just the more and more you diet, but your arms don't change.
No.
In fact, they look more jimmied, really. You know,
just end up freaker, don't they? So, oh yeah, which is it's funny, but you know, everyone's different with that. But what was quite nice with the feedback, I mean, I've had so much positive feedback, and I really do just have to say that before I get all teary and emotional. But do you know what's been the absolute like best outcome apart from a sword and an IFBB Pro Card? But the amount of response I've had from Facebook and Instagram of people messaging me saying, do you know what? I've seen you compete over the weekend and I am absolutely buzzing to go to the gym today and I'm going to train my ass off. Lots of natty guys, lots of people saying, I want to do an untested show and jump in and follow in your footsteps and all this kind of stuff, which has just been amazing. But like, people are like, you know, I've heard of clients like skipping around the living room and shouting at the screen and like, you know, like literally it's like watching a Rocky movie. Can't wait to go and train. It's like, so that response has been amazing. So
well,
thank you, everybody.
I have to thank, I guess you have to thank and apologise to two bros, and specifically Ian, because I think that you weren't really supposed to be cheering in the auditorium because COVID and restrictions and stuff. Claire and I tried to be as placid as possible. I was like, go on, Bob. And then as it got a little bit more exciting, it became a lot louder. And I think actually for your class, it really became a bodybuilding show again, because, you know, unfortunately for the classes before, everyone had to kind of stick to the rules, and it's what everyone's dealing with at the moment. It's just almost like that class was so good and so deep and so exciting that everyone just had to kind of get involved. And then you heard us cheer at the end, like I was out of my seat. And it's the same for everybody. Like, you know, Cara was watching it back in the hotel with the guys, because people won't know you had a group of people come down to watch it, even though they couldn't get in the venue. They were watching it from a hotel 10 minutes away. They erupted as well in the same sort of way. So I think that sentiment is just held with everybody. You know, anybody that knows you, anybody that has watched you, just kind of just really what it means, you know, for a natural bodybuilder that has done, you know, we've heard about guys that, you know, coming up and like claiming natural and yes, they may not. It's never really our issue to kind of discuss that. But for someone to come through the ranks that you have, to come through the BNBF, to be a DFAC pro, to come through the two federations with the most rigorous testing, to come through them and win your pro card, that means a lot for people, I think. You know, and I think that kind of is the reason why so many people are excited.
I mean, I have had a few messages saying like, please tell me that you are still natural and that like, you know, you've not just gone on a load of gear and then you've done this. It's like, yes, 100% still natural. I was still planning to do the Grand Prix, which is the DFAC Grand Prix, which for anyone who's watching doesn't really follow the podcast, it's basically when you become pro in the BNBF, which is the British Natural Bodybuilding Federation, you become a DFAC pro, which is a drug-free athletes coalition pro. So the pro like NPC, IFBB. And I was always planning to do the Grand Prix, which was the latest show in the year, with actually one of my training partners, Lewis Smith. Like, we were going to be going against each other. So with the times, if you go on my Instagram and see me and him laughing at each other in the garden training, he lives around the corner from me. So the fact you've got two Natty pros living in the same town, about 5 minutes away from each other, and being able to train and stuff through lockdown and everything together was just jokes. But so yes, still Natty. You know, whoever knows? You know, 10 years down the line, maybe I'll have to go on replacement therapy because I'm trying to compete in the IFBB. But until this point, I think, as you made quite clear at the weekend, it was, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was like all the things that you can tell where I'm probably like got the more natural side of bodybuilding, like the smaller waist and good muscle separation. It's like they're the things that actually made me stand out as opposed to kind of hurt me. Yeah. Which is debatable, I guess, because obviously the guys at the top do have great muscle separation, but it's a different look, isn't it? I think.
And there's the thing as well, is people who don't know you or don't know anything about you until now, on the face of it, will be like, oh my God, this guy did his first pro qualifier and won his pro card. This guy just must be like, you know, just like come out of nowhere and this and that. That is not the case. You know, you've been competing and training and building your physique for a long time. So that muscle separation that you talk about, that's come from, you know, I talk about watching Dusty and Ron and Fuad's podcast and things like that. And it's funny because they talk about recently, and it seems like top guys in the IFBB have recently been trying to say to younger guys, okay, drugs, yes, we acknowledge they're a thing, but it's not the thing, right? Your training, your rest, your eating, and all that kind of stuff. If that's paramount and that's checked off, then okay, maybe the drugs can assist in that kind of way. Well, what you've shown really is that by having those things, training, diet, rest, squared off, and the best that you can possibly be, you've put yourself in this position, you know. And I think that has to show something for people, right? You know, that has to help hammer it home that it's just not all about the cycle and stuff like that. And okay, we're talking about classic physique, and we're talking about, you know, you were significantly lighter than a lot of the guys on that stage. So okay, maybe we're not on about this in every class. You know, for what it's worth right now, you know, you brought everything that you needed, and you didn't need the exogenous stuff at this point, you know. So it's cool.
So so that's been really cool, and you know, to really like, do you know what's really good as well? Like, I mean, shout out to people like Ryan Cartwright, which is Rhino, who was competing against in the overall, and people like Jimmy, who's one of JP's athletes. Just like really nice feedback, and like Ryan reached out to me, wants to come and do a training session. Johnny, who won the novice category, like people want to come do sessions and things like that, but like they're not jumping on their kind of like, I was beaten by someone who was 70 pounds smaller than me. Like Jimmy was 70 pounds heavier than me on stage, right? Which is huge. But he made a really nice video on basically how, you know, the judges have told me to come in harder, more conditioned, on the money for, you know, conditioning wise, and he'll win the show. But it wasn't until he's come against someone with, you know, better lines and just a small look, but just kind of more aesthetic, that it made him then look more wider than he was, because it's kind of like, you know, as I said, filling the criteria. So, but all that's just been so positive, and I couldn't have really asked for that, because I think that, you know, when you maybe don't get the result that you want in shows and things like that, you know, people often like just talk crap, or, you know, or say I should have won this, should have won that, but they've all put up really nice posts, and they've also inboxed to say I'm genuinely happy for you. So that's been wicked as well. Like, you know, that's kind of what you would want from a bodybuilding show, and not just feel like, without sounding like a dick, it's like, you know, the sort of Jay Cutler, the time he finally beat Ronnie, and it's like, you know, he was like generally a bit like felt a bit weird about it, and it was kind of a little bit like that. Like with me, like with Ryan, he's been like knocking at the door for ages, and when you meet good people and then you end up beating them, there's no part of you that wants to gloat and go like, I'm the winner, fuck off everyone else. It's like, it's just not like that, and I'm pleased it hasn't been like that.
Well, what I think, and I was being fortunate enough to be in the crowd. People on the live stream wouldn't have been able to hear your acceptance speech, right? Because unfortunately they couldn't have. Unfortunately, they couldn't have sound. I think it's because it was Facebook. But without getting into it, anyone that was able to hear that would have truly understood the genuine elation, shock, and just the only way you could describe it was pure happiness at the win. And like you said, there was no fist pumping, there was no screw you guys or anything like that. It was pure gratefulness. I think you said thank you to Two Bros about 50 times. And quite rightly, because you were given an opportunity. I just really like you. It's so nice. Can I compete here every week, please? But in all seriousness, you had nothing but great things to say about the way the show was run. The organisation, to do all this during a pandemic where nobody knows if shows are going ahead. Yeah. Why do you think people were jumping around in the living room when you won as well? Because these are people that are hoping to compete in shows in 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks' time. And to see this one go off without a hitch, that gives people hope as well. And you were training throughout lockdown, doing that, and all this was just a culmination of that. And when you won that, and when you gave your acceptance speech, showed nothing but just gratitude, humbleness, and that's great, isn't it?
So yeah, as I said, it's just, it's also much to take in, isn't it? But it's just been like so cool, and obviously, we joke and everything, but like even getting like the shout out on Nick Strength and Power today, like that's massive. There's someone 940,000 subscribers, and probably more people will see these videos as the time goes on. So I'm just so like thankful.
100,000 views in 12 hours, that video. And so I'll watch the video. You're on the thumbnail next to Brandon Curry. So you watch the video, it's Brandon Curry, Patrick Moore, Nick Walker, Rough Diesel, and this guy.
Waterhouse.
And I've said this to you. I've said this to you 100 times this weekend, and I don't think it's dropped for you yet, and it probably won't until you do a pro show that's got some of these guys in it. But people grow up wanting to be a footballer and play for their favourite football team. People want to be a movie star, whatever it is you want to be. You have wanted to be an IFBB Pro. You've wanted to compete in the Olympia. Our friendship started because we both kind of was like, oh, you follow bodybuilding. Yeah, you follow bodybuilding, and then geeking out on bodybuilding.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. Cheers, Dave. And now, and that's like an actual dream come true for you now. You actually now get to compete with the guys that we sat up and watched the Olympia last year. We sat up and watched the Arnold Classic. We were watching the New York Pro a few weeks ago. We were watching Tampa last week. That's you now. And I don't think that will hit home until you do it. Until you stood next to these people on stage. Until you stood next to Terence Ruffin, Seabull,
That's ridiculous. I'll just be like laughing, probably fist pump them. I'll be like, oh, hello. Been watching you. We're watching your stuff. I'm a big fan.
Can you sign my bicep, please?
Yeah, please. So yeah, really. So we're covering everything really like pretty fast, to be honest. But I would just like to talk a little bit about show day then. I think really. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna to try and do it in a bit more of an order. Just before you get to show day, I think we're assuming that more people will watch this now, and they won't know how you prep. It'd be interesting to talk about just really quickly just what your diet looks like, because I think we've spoke about it at length before, but always kind of from a view that the people watching this will be maybe natural competitors and people who compete BNBF, UKDFBA, MPA, all that kind of thing. I think it'd be interesting for those competitors that mostly follow NPC, PCA, IFBB, what your approach to getting ready for this show was. Like, maybe not, you don't have to go in super detail, but I think people would be very surprised, interested to know, like, you know, what you do with carbs and protein and that kind of thing, because it's quite different, I think.
Okay, cool. So since probably 2013, previous to that, when doing shows, and bear in mind I did my first show in 2008, which I won the British. Not sure if I mentioned that. But basically from that point onwards, I'd switched to high carb dieting, because all the guys at the top who I know of, which was like David Kay, I mean, Nathan Williams, I don't think was around at the time. But way back then, anyone who was any good, and when I went to Worlds in 2009, were all doing high carb, moderate protein, moderate fat. And so basically that was kind of my diet setup for that year, which I won my pro card in, as in natural pro card, in 2013. So basically the way you'd set up a diet, first of all, is you get your lean stage weight and you do 1 gram of protein per lean pound of muscle weight. Now, that sounds right. So basically for me, I'm 165 pounds on stage. So really 165 to 170 grams of protein per day is basically where I start my diet off from that. And then basically carbs and fat then go up accordingly to your activity regarding how well you utilize carbohydrates, your training, your amount of activity per week, how much steps you do, all that kind of stuff. So for me at the start of the diet, it was ×3 for body weight. So it was sort of well over 400 grams of carbs a day, high 400, I think, at the start of prep in like September last year. And fats was kind of like 0.2 to 0.3. So we're talking about 45 grams or so a day. So, I mean, calories aren't extremely high. But one thing I would say, like with the start of prep on that kind of food. Now, I would say the general norm, I guess, for a lot of natural guys are they tend to do high carbs with maybe the assisted side, maybe on general. Now, I'm kind of blanket statement it, but they tend to do higher protein because the body can utilize more. And carbohydrates are kind of maybe less. So, so from dieting and setting up that way, I think I did probably the first up until about March, April time. So from September till then, it was the same diet every day, pretty much. All I did was I started cardio from the start, because usually I wouldn't add that until later on. And I would say it's only a very, very small deficit, but I was losing weight each week. Sometimes not even a pound, sometimes half a pound a week or whatever, but the body composition was getting better. And the only way I can describe it is probably from September till March, it's like throwing a deck chair off a Titanic. Like, it looks and makes no difference. I mean, you lose 2 stone and you still look terrible. So from being a very out of shape, or when I say out of shape, I'm never flabby fat, but I'm fat. There's no disregarding it. Okay, so I'm sure I'll post a video and people can make that judgment for themselves. But all I would say is that it's a very, very like optimal off season, because basically what I'm doing at that point, I'm not eating any junk food. I'm not eating off plan. I'm not having as I said, like any like higher cheat meals or anything. I'm just basically sticking to my food time every day. Nutrition's great, sleep's great. I'm doing everything that I can. So the first probably 4 months or so was like someone really optimizing their off season. So I am coming down with enough of a deficit to basically make a small dent, but the calories and stuff were really high, and I was just creating a deficit through exercise. So by doing a half an hour walk in the morning and training once a day, that's all I was doing. It wasn't until about March time until I switched to carb cycling, because the actual weight loss was too slow with how much I had to get ready for the original date of that show.
Yeah.
And that basically went to start off with. It was Saturday and Sunday were highs. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday were medium days, and Thursday, Fridays were low. And when we're talking highs, we're talking 600 grams of carbs on a Saturday and probably below 200 on a low day. All I did along that, so not super low on a thing to start off with, but low enough in comparison. And as prep went on, it stayed like that for quite a while. But all I did was then add in an extra low day The medium days were just Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday was my big day. Sunday was still big, but not as big. And I basically just went through phases of like cleaning things up a little bit more. And it's like silly stuff. Like I'd have pancakes every day for my breakfast, which was just oats, banana, egg, and water, with Splenda on and lemon juice, and then one of them with peanut butter on or whatever. And all I did was like, I decided to take Splenda and stuff out and just switch to eggs and oats, because I was thinking, I don't know if this sweetener is making any difference. I don't know. So all them little things, I just kind of, as we say, the sort of terms of use of turning the screw. So basically just going, okay, let's shift through the gears. And that's what I did. Well,
it's, it was a comment or a saying John Meadows made a while back now. And it always resonated with me, and it was making the most out of the least. So I think a lot of people panic maybe when they start a prep or in the middle of a prep or whatever, and just start, you're talking about throwing a deck chair off the Titanic, they start throwing bolts and holes and everything, just because they really panic and say, I'll do this, I'm going to add this much cardio, I'm going to take this much food out, and I'm going to do it all on the same day. And then you'll get an effect, and you'll probably get quite a dramatic effect, you'll lose a lot. But then you see yourself looking down the barrel of like 10 weeks left of prep with nothing to take away. So then that's when you start doing hours and hours and hours of cardio each day. You're not eating any food. And I think, okay, you started your prep so long ago because you were as big and heavy as you know, as people will see when you put your transformation on. But despite that, you still stuck to the plan, you know, believed in the process of just chipping away, turning the screw, most out of the least. And with that, you were in the deficit, and the body fat come off, and then you acknowledge the time when you had to push a little bit harder, okay, but even at that point you didn't just throw everything out, you employed another technique that you knew would put you in the right direction. And I think two reasons why I wanted you to tell people that is because I think people will be interested, those that do low carb diets will be interested in just knowing that we've said before that there isn't one way of dieting. We're not saying to people everyone do high carb diets, because even you yourself do a lower carb diet than what a lot of natural guys do, right? You know, you mentioned the likes of Dave K. The amount of food that he can eat compared to what you can eat on a prep is vastly different. But likewise, I would suspect that the amount of food and carbohydrates that you were eating compared to some other guys is also massive. You know, it's much higher. Really, it's just, there are many, many ways to get in shape, and you know, I would implore competitors either just starting out or even advanced, for what it's worth coming from me, is just to look at these other techniques and to look at someone like you, look at the physique you've got. We talk about the kind of like muscle separation and detail that you had on stage. Both you and I are convinced that has something to do with the diet and the carbohydrates that you're able to eat, and simple things like muscle fullness, you know, pushing against the skin, causing that separation. And I just think that there is too much, not entirely. Sometimes you have to go low carb, and I understand that. I've done low carb before, and it got me inside out peeled, but just very flat. There is too much of an onus on to get in shape. You have to not eat carbohydrates, and I think that, especially now when we talk about, there's always it's come up a lot recently actually with Ian Valier winning New York, and the kind of back and forth with Milos. Fuad spoke about it a lot. Is a lot of too much hate coming from the sort of 90s bodybuilding, saying that modern bodybuilding isn't good and this, and you know, we've heard it a million times, right? The golden era and stuff like that. And I wonder if that kind of reliance on low carb diets has something to do with that. You know, we spoke about that before. It's that absolute condition over everything. You know, glutes must be in. If your glutes are not in, then you aren't winning a show. But with that comes flatness, and flatness can often look like people are out of shape, right? You know, it's like, oh, bodybuilders don't diet hard enough these days. They do. You know, you look at Sean Ray turnaround, and there isn't shredded glutes. You compare someone like nowadays turn around in like a third call out at Tampa Pro or something like that, and glutes are in. You know, these guys are dieting hard enough. Yeah. It's just perhaps that the techniques aren't bringing the same result. And I wonder whether it's things like that mantra now of you must diet on low carbohydrates. So again, that's not saying it's for you know, everyone should eat high carbs, but it's just maybe consider it. The other thing I'd point out is that what people may or may not know is that, firstly, you're a prep coach, and if anybody would like to reach out, it's you can find you on Instagram. But you're a prep coach who also preps yourself. I could not do that. There is not a chance in hell. You know, I've tried to mini cut myself and I can't do it. You know, and I know a lot of people would be the same. But I think it's testament to yourself and the select few people that do prep themselves. You know, to realize what an achievement that actually is as well. Because, you know, I know that you talk about how smooth the prep is, and we know it was smooth, but that doesn't mean that it didn't come without days where you had a wobble. You know, you thought, am I going to be ready? Am I this? Am I that? You know, when I'm prepping, if I'm having a wobble, I can speak to friends, coach, and sort of say, you know, are we on track and this, that, and the other. You have to ask your friends, but also yourself as a coach, and you have to look at yourself subjectively and say, yes, no, that's really tough, you know. And so I think that's useful for people to know, really.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I would say one thing I'm quite good at is if I make a decision, I stick by it, whether it be right or wrong. But I just go with what my gut says, and then I don't do anything, and then I make it happen. It's as opposed to like, fuck, I've just read an article saying that, you know, low calories would be better on this day, and intermittent fasting's good, and this is good, and this is good, and I need to take more vitamin D3, whatever. I think I just, you know, I go with my plan, I execute it, and then obviously if I don't yield a result, I give it time before I then decide to make the next change. So it's like a level head, you know, that's all it is.
Time and trust in the process, right? Because you make that decision, you say I'm sticking to it, whether it's right or wrong. You give it the time to work or not work. If it works, great, keep going that way. If it doesn't work, it's not, shit, I've got 12 weeks to get ready for this show and I've just lost 2 weeks because I made a wrong decision. You know, you started prepping back in September, so you were able to go, okay, I've made this decision. It didn't yield the result I wanted, but I stuck to it. I now have that information. That's not going to work, so we'll go this way. Time and trust in the process, right? And they're the simple things that I think are lost, you know, really on a lot of competitors nowadays. So
and I would say, like, you know, if I hadn't done such like those 2 preps back to back in 2016 and 17, where I'd had very up and down years with regards to results. Well, 16 I was kind of like good at the Grand Prix, and then great at Worlds, got world win. The second year, I then had a couple of losses where I hadn't quite nailed it, and then looked all-time best by the end of the year. But those preps were far more stressful and far more like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I was still prepping myself, which were massive learning curves for this time round. So I really do think like I changed things earlier and just went, I'm going to do this now because last time I waited and then I ran out of time. So I'm just going to implement it now and then stick with it. And that's what I did, basically. So that 2 preps were invaluable, really, I think, to, you know, successes this year, really.
Yeah. Time, sticking to the process, knowledge. You know, you've not been doing this. This isn't your first show. A lot of people are like, oh, look at this guy who just turned pro in his first show. That is not the case. All right, cool. So do you want to break down show day then?
So show day, yeah. So as I mentioned before, I mean, I did have a bit of a hard run-in with the week or days leading up to it. So a couple of good little things. So as I said, I was like, I think just really run down. I went to see Darren, or Coach DSL, if you follow him on Instagram, who is like one of my best friends in bodybuilding, who started bodybuilding together with, apart from you, of course, mate. Who I started bodybuilding with in 2008, and I went to see him with some posing practice. He always has a good second eye to have a look over me, and it's only really this year I've always have Darren, and I've had you as well since we've been training together, so that's been cool, and also Lewis, who I train with as well. So without getting too many, you know, people to sort of tell me where I was at, I kind of already like preempted. I know how I look, but let's just get a second opinion kind of thing. And I went and got some help from Darren just with regards to putting my routine together. Obviously, I do posing, coaching, everything myself. But you need someone to be able to look at you to go, no, you need to move here or there, because unless you're filming it and going backwards and forwards, you need that help. And Darren's fantastic at that. So if anyone does in the Oxfordshire area and want some help with posing, and Darren's a good one to go for that. But basically, he was like, I'm happy with where you're at, but you've definitely been harder at Worlds, no doubt about it, but it's good enough and you look great. So all good. 5 days out, my legs were very tired still. So I had stopped doing cardio basically, or doing just moving from an hour and a half's cardio a day, basically back to 20 minutes on the stairs each morning. And that week I really did minimal amounts of cardio. And it's really hard mentally because you want to push the last week of the show for the last little bit of fat loss. But actually resting my legs and let my body recoup a little bit was better for me. But then I got sick. So basically I had man flu. There's no other way to put it. Basically, body was a bit run down. And as I said, I was throwing in the ibuprofen and cold and flu tablets to try and feel a bit better, because I wanted to go and get some training sessions done in the last depletion days. From taking the anti-inflammatories and everything, my appetite went to shit. And like I was carb depleting, and I almost aborted the carb up because I was like, I'm not hungry and I'm still really full. Yeah. But I wasn't full. I was just carrying basically 3.5, 4 pounds of water. So when I jumped on the scales on Thursday before the show, I was just like a watery mess actually. And I went to Shreds Fitness Centre where I was training that day. And Reese was like, well, if the 3 pounds or 4 pounds isn't actually on you, you can't see it, then it's not a problem. And I was like, yeah, I agree. And then when I went to pose, it was like someone had just let a bit of water out of a balloon. And it was just like, I was just running of water everywhere. It was really hot. I was like, maybe it's just hot in the gym. So I posed, looked terrible, did my back session, absolutely hammered myself on that back session. Then I posed again, looked a bit better. And then I thought I need to try and get some of this water out of me. So Bro Science over here basically sat in my car with the heat on a 25-degree day, sweating my ass off for about 2 hours, sat outside Sainsbury's. And funny enough, I looked about 50% better the next day. And then another 10% better, another 10% better. And then the trip up to Watford was a little bit of a hiccup, because we got halfway to Watford and my missus had left her bags at home. So that meant going to get my tanning done and check in, then driving back to Derby and then back to Watford, which probably, they say everything happens for a reason. I don't know, but it seemed to do me some good, because I sat in the car with my feet up. I had a sleep. I got all my meals in. I wasn't sat there looking at the mirror every 2 minutes, and my brain was preoccupied. So if anyone wants some tips on pre-night show, just fucking drive up and down the country.
For all the new American listeners, that was what was the trip? About 6 hours, sort of. Two. So.
Yes, it was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, exactly that. So. Got to bed about midnight, 1 o'clock on the night before the show. I slept like a baby that night, which is unheard of before sleeping over a show. Woke up at like 7 o'clock, good like 6-7 hours sleep. Woke up looking loads better. You came to the hotel room, took some optimal photos in my Ugg slippers by the window.
Window to the left, optimal hotel. Everyone knows it, right? It's the... If you don't get them on show day, are you even a bodybuilder?
Yeah, exactly. So that was cool. And as I said, the more I rested and the more I carved up, because I did do a good carb up. I did a 900, a 600, and then a 400 on show day, after depleting 300, 200, 150 leading up to that week. So really simple, just basically potatoes and oats. But for carb up, just white potato, sweet potato, nothing else, not even any protein until the last meal. And just my legs got better and better and better and better as the days went on. Just resting.
Did you tell people 900 grams of carbs from potato? How many grams of potato is that? Because
it worked out. I don't know what it was in kilos, but I think it's about 4.5 kilos, because it was 350 every hour for the first day until I can't remember what time. Then I spaced it out to 2 hours in the afternoon. And I started about 8 o'clock. But usually I do my carb ups. I get up earlier, go to bed later, and do them every 2 hours. But this year, my body just seemed to just absorb it. Like I didn't even have a single bit of abdomen distension at all. It was just like washboard abs. I was just like, this is great. It's going in really well. So my body obviously needs it. And arguably, on reflection, was still nowhere near full enough.
Yeah, you could have
been miles fuller next time round I compete, because you have to test that water. But it was like, right, well, with being ill and not being quite hard enough in the back still, with the legs being a little bit softer than they have been in the past, I don't want to push the carb up like I did in 2017 for the Grand Prix, and I spilled loads.
Yeah.
So that went pretty well. And then obviously, show day. So show day was really nice because although the show they weren't allowed to go in and get my tan done, the last coat of tan by Get Bronze, until 6 in the evening. But we weren't allowed to actually go backstage till 6:30 or so. And we were on at 7:30 basically. So because of COVID, it wasn't like sat there backstage for 7 hours until your category came on. So it just and when I woke up on show day morning, it didn't feel like, I didn't have that nerves there because it wasn't like I was competing that morning. You had the day. So it was like, just sort of get up and chilled, and it was great. So backstage, I think this comes from experience, but I was like, so can you tell me what time we're going to be on? They're like, well, we're running on time. We'll roughly be on about 7:30. I'm thinking, it's 7 o'clock. Why is nobody pumping up? And I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to get my dumbbells up my bag, which was jokes because it was like the heaviest bag trying to walk in there.
It was.
It for me.
You're welcome.
I actually got up and was like someone climbing Everest with that bag. Ridiculous. But yeah, I took on some grapes, took on some almonds, and just started pumping up with some light dumbbell curls and some light, back squeezes. And everyone else was still sat around. And there was like one guy pumping up. And I thought, do you know what? When you pump up on show day, you actually need it a lot longer than you think, because you need that pump to be able to sort of hold in the muscle. It's like if you go and do your 50 push-ups, it's like the air's gone in and out almost, like with regards to like a balloon. You spend an hour training chest and you've got a great pump and it holds for like 20 minutes afterwards and you walk out the gym feeling amazing. You can't replicate that pump on show day. It's like fucking impossible. So I basically did that, and yeah, that was great. So I pumped up, got a fairly decent pump backstage. Everybody backstage looked better than I was. Bigger, harder, more vascular. And I thought, do you know what? It doesn't matter at this point. I'm just going to go and enjoy the day. And a couple of people, there was a guy called Jake there who was like, mate, you look incredible. And I was just like, oh, cool. So we were sharing up pump up bands and pumping up and stuff. And that gave me a bit of confidence. So cheers, shout out to Jake for that. And then, yeah, it just sort of unraveled that way, really, with the call outs. The call outs were a bit weird, as in it was obviously numerical for the first 4 or 5. And then they did the main first call out, and I was third to be called out. And they then moved me for the centre for the second round. So I thought, I'm definitely in with a shout. And then, as you all know, it massively threw me. Then what I thought was then maybe the official first, or the top 4 or top 5 that pulled last. But then there was me and another guy called Johnny who'd won the novices. He did the crossover, and they didn't bring him out in a call out either. And yeah, my heart sank.
Yeah, could see. Yeah, we could see.
I haven't made a top 5, and them guys, seeing them backstage and stuff, like the guy who was like 4th, I think it was, humongous legs, like so much muscle, looked really, really good. So I wasn't in that call out. And then after they did that call out, they said, right, we're going to announce the top 5 who come back and do their routines. And luckily I was the 3rd one to get called in that. So I thought, well, I'm obviously made the top 5. So I was buzzing.
For anyone that doesn't know then, what we think that call out more than likely was, and I think you get this experience from watching bodybuilding shows, it was probably confirming the back end of the first call out and the top guys in the second call out, right? So you'll often get that, and it can come across as strange for competitors as well. It can come across as strange call outs, and you'll see people on the back line that have maybe been called out. They're not called out in that kind of confirmatory between call outs, call out, if you will. Yeah. Kind of rolling their eyes and being disheartened because they think maybe they're not in with a shout anymore. But that's not the case. And what I would say as well is this: the show was so good because it was a small venue. You could really see all the competitors, and you could see guys that weren't being called out, kind of like unhappy on the back line. In natural bodybuilding, we always talk about you still just keep going on that back line because you might get. There was actually one point where the judges, I think a number had been written wrong, and it kind of took a little bit of a rethink to call somebody out that was in a first call out, but had been left out by accident and was kind of visibly unhappy until they kind of rectified it. And it's just keep competing, even if you're on that back line, if you've not been called out, because you just don't know. You don't know whether it's we just want to see these two guys next to each other. We haven't quite made our mind up, and that's so important, I think.
Yeah, you might have been overlooked, and then all of a sudden you go, like I've done it judging shows. You look at him and go, I didn't see that guy earlier. Let me put him against there. And then he's moved up 4 spots just because he's been through one good call out because he's got better. Someone else has got worse. So, yeah, 100%. You keep working. So that was awesome. So then really enjoyed my routine, which was good. Obviously, come back and do that. I knew that if I got to do my routine, it would be, classic enough to be kind of like, to be received well. And it was great because, every time I hit a shot, I had even in the call-outs and everything, I had all the judges just looking at me like that, which is no better feeling when you're thinking, I'm definitely getting a look in for sure.
Yeah. You could see from where we were sat, because we were very close to the judges. You could see that they were in awe of the routine. They were very, very impressed with the routine, and that's really cool, isn't it? Because you hear a lot nowadays about routines not meaning anything, and whether or not which federation judges routines and doesn't, and all that, it doesn't matter. You put on a spectacle on that show, and for that class and for what it meant, for the pictures you get afterwards, it was really impressive, and the judges were really impressive. And you left that impression on them, and that's really cool.
That's cool. So that was great. And then, as I said, I'm not sure if I said at the start of the podcast, but it was just, I kept waiting to hear my name. I was 5th place. I was like, right, I've made 4th. And then it was okay, in 3rd place. And then I was like, no way. I made top 3. And then it was top 2. And then when I won, it was just what's gone on here? What's happened? Because as I said, the call out threw me. And I just thought I was just happy to be here at that point to make the top 5. And then to win it was just hilarious. And then all the pressure was off after that. I went backstage afterwards and everyone was saying congratulations and I looked great. And obviously and I was texting you, and you and Claire both text me saying, you look great, but you need to work your ass off for the overall because you got a little bit kind of not complacent, but you just could work harder. Your legs kept going and things like that. And I think some of that was still tiredness in the legs because, I held them up. Some of the photos I've got, actually my legs are on, which is probably hilarious for the fact that the one time that he actually clicked the photo that my legs were hard. So that looks good. But yeah, it was one of them at that point. You could say, you could see in my whole demeanor, because when I looked at Jimmy and the Irish guy, I know his name's it's Ivan, I think it is.
Ivan or something, I think it was. Yeah.
They were all they were all in shape. They all had glutes in, way more muscle.
Yeah.
And obviously, and I knew how good Ryan was backstage. Looking, he was pumping up for ages, and just I watched him on the live stream in the middleweights, just unbelievable. I was like, no way. So I was just happy to be there. I was just happy to be there and enjoy posing and having a good time. And then, obviously, they gave me the Wayne Nimek, which is a guy whose actual gym I went to down south just after he passed away, funny enough. All the gym was shut up, so I didn't get to train there. I went and trained in another gym in Southampton because it was 8 o'clock in the morning. They didn't open until like 10, like old school bodybuilding gyms. But the guy had passed away, and they do an award for them every year, which is usually a most muscular award. But they decided that year, or this year, to give it to the most classic pose. So they all asked us to hit classic pose, and it became a bit of a pose down, which was cool. Yeah, more classic. So that was cool. And then obviously they gave me that award, which was like, I was just like buzzing. Now, the funny thing was, now, as you know, the live stream, some people thought I'd won the overall, and some people thought I'd placed 4th. Because obviously they gave me the trophy, they called me out first, and everyone was like, oh, they're obviously placing it 1 to 4.
Yeah.
And then they put me back on the line, and then everyone was like, oh, what's gone off here?
Yeah.
And then obviously to then like he did the Bob Ciccarello stalling tactics on announcing the winner.
Gee, didn't he just?
So I was just laughing. You can see I was just laughing, and then obviously then to announce my name was just like, as I said, it was a genuine one of them, not a fake one. Like, oh my God, kissed the
James Binder again.
Yeah, it wasn't one of them. It was. I'm sure you can see. It was pure shock. Like, has that actually just happened? And then the worst acceptance speech ever, because it just didn't know what to say. Oh, this is a great day. This is such a nice time.
Oh, can we be friends? Can we bodybuilding friends forever?
And then obviously said it was just a whirlwind from there, basically. So that was it. That was a full show day wrap up.
I was going to jump in and say, when you were talking about the chap Ivan, for what it's worth, amazing routine. I don't know if you got to see it from the side, and people wouldn't. The only people that would have fully appreciated it was the people in the auditorium. The only way I can describe his posing music, it was like an a cappella of clapping and clicks. You'll have to try and I hope someone recorded it. But with each beat, he was hitting a pose. It was Lila Brada. It was so impressive. And like Claire and I were like really into it. Even at that point when we knew that, because he might have been in Classic D class because he was a big guy, right? C.
Yeah.
Even though at that point we knew probably he'd be in the overall with you, it just didn't matter because it was so wicked to see, and he'd really put time and effort into it. So for what it's worth, we really enjoyed that, so that was really cool.
One thing I didn't ask you at the show is, what did you actually think in the overall? Did you think I'd actually taken the show, or had you thought like it could just go either way, like who they're going to give it to? Because Claire didn't really know.
So, like I said, in your class, when everyone's coming out individually, we thought Rob's going to struggle there because he's not bigger than anyone, he's not harder than anyone. But when you come out, it was clear that you fitted the category. And then as they posed you and as they moved you around, that was clear. Even at that point, though, we thought that you wouldn't take the overall, because I was thinking Ryan's super impressive, and I think has got a very classic physique. Great legs, nice midsection, crazy top line. That like pec shelf, big arms, big. Oh, it just fucking looks really cool. And then there was another couple of big guys as well. And we thought, but we knew as well that like you were upset that you might not get to do your routine if you didn't place top 5, right? And you just won your class. So Claire and I were kind of happy with it, saying like, you know what, he's just going to go on and enjoy the overall now, and that's going to be really cool. It was only when you come out for the overall that I started to change my mind, and I thought, actually, Rob stands out here more than anyone for the same reasons he did in his class. He has the smallest waist. He's the best poser. At that point, you'd kind of probably gone a little bit flatter, but you weren't sweating anymore.
Yeah.
So you looked a little bit harder. You were happier as well by that point because you were less nervous because you'd won your class, and anything else was a bonus, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of like flipped again to kind of thinking, you know what, maybe you can take this. But even when you won the most classic pose award, I thought, you know what, that's really cool. He'll be really happy with that. But I think probably he's got that, but we'll just get pipped. I think Ryan's probably got this. He's gonna get
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, like almost like we think you look amazing, really appreciate what you brought, but like here's most classic award. So even at that point, I have to say, like, I didn't know.
Amazing.
And then you won it and it erupted. So, yeah.
So I just need to say a quick shout out to Marcus Lee.
Okay.
Because now I have 2 swords and he still doesn't have one.
Unlucky.
We're going to
Viewers of the podcast.
like this above the telly.
Oh dear. Well, if he asks nicely, you can maybe lend one of them for a little while, right?
Yeah.
Try and win one. All right then, cool. So let's wrap it up briefly with what's your plans?
So, buzzing news. They did tell me on the day of the show, as I came off stage, there is a pro show in 7.5 weeks today. Is it Tuesday or Wednesday? Tuesday.
Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. Cool. Yes, so that is Jamie DeRigo, IFBB Pro 212, prepped by the real technician, Chris Aceto, is launching his own YouTube channel, I believe, or members website, maybe. I don't know quite what it is just yet. Been quite a big fan of Jamie's, watching him train in Dubai and stuff. When I went out there, I remember walking into Banus gym and seeing this huge guy cranking out some curls and thought, I didn't realise that was Jamie DeRigo. And he's obviously got a wicked online presence with coaching and everything, and obviously he prepped quite a number of guys and everything. But yeah, he is sponsoring the Two Bros Pro Show, or the IFBB Pro Show. So I don't know if that's the British Grand Prix or if they're doing exactly the same one. It's the same date. So I don't know if one's at Lee Valley, one is at the Watford Pump House. I don't quite know yet because it literally came out yesterday.
Yeah.
But that show is in 7.5 weeks and I'm going to do it.
An Olympia qualifier, yeah?
It's an Olympia qualifier for 2021 because of the travel restrictions and stuff this year.
Yeah.
Now, we obviously know I'm going to be training and dieting and stuff to win because we don't know any other way. But in all seriousness, I fully expect to go there and get my absolute ass handed to me because all the other guys do. I sort of know of a few guys doing the show, like Darren Farrell and other guys who are huge and still classic. And I fully expect to get swept up and that be the end of the competition season regardless. But I'll just be happy to be there. So what's very fortunate for me is that in 2014, when I did my first Grand Prix as a pro, the very biggest thing that hurt me was going into that show thinking that I was the worst one. And I very, very much have had a different change in mindset ever since that happened. So 100%, I still believe that I could go and win. But as you said before, but it's not like I can't believe I can't get beat. It's a completely different mentality. It's just something that I'm just buzzing to do. I know that I'm going to look better than what I did at this last show by a good percentage, because of the way you just need to be in shape and then continue to get leaner whilst you're in shape. Especially for natural guys, you tend to find you just get better and better and better. And then, okay, you might be over dieted for a long period of time if it goes on forever. But for me, second, third show, I'm better and better and better. So I'm super excited to see what I look like, and couldn't be happier to be going and stuff. So can't wait to sign off and get my IFBB Pro Card in the post.
You're going to be like a kid in the candy store. I've said it a million times now. Kids grow up wanting to play football, wanting to be a movie star, rock star, bloody astronaut. You wanted to be an IFBB Pro. And you now get the chance to go and compete in pro shows, stand next to people that we sit watching, on Olympia live streams and stuff like that, and it's fucking cool. So let's wrap it up with that point you just made, because I think a lot of people would learn from this, is that mantra of always believe you can win, don't believe you can't be beat. That's what got you here for this show. If you trained every day like you were trying to win your pro card, and there would have been times when you were in your garden getting crushed by a barbell trying to bench press.
Load the gag reel. That's it.
Yeah, dumbbell curls with an umbrella, squats with an umbrella, Even in the weeks leading up to it, when you're seeing guys that were doing the show and you were thinking, oh, maybe a bit off more than I can chew. Show week, you had your wobble because you were sick and all that. But at no point did you concede that you can't win the show. Like, I can't give it everything. But also at no point did you have that kind of arrogance that I'm just going to go and win my pro card. And there is a fine line. You can do both. And I think the more people that do that will enjoy bodybuilding more. They won't be so upset and butthurt when they get beat, and can enjoy the wins so much more. Yeah. And I think that's important for people to know. So
yeah, so that's cool. So obviously, a big push to improve on that conditioning, because I'm sure you're going to give me the punchline.
Oh, it's never going to be sweeter than this, right? Because Natty Muscle Radio.
There's always another level.
Amazing. Right.
Next week.
Peace out.